The night was quiet, but Daniel could not sleep. He sat outside his small cabin, staring at the dark sky above the alien world. The stars shone like silver dust scattered across a black canvas. The forest around him was alive with strange sounds, chirps, low growls, rustling leaves. He was alone, the only human on this planet left behind after the crash of his survey ship. Food was scarce. His supplies had run low weeks ago. Every day was a fight to find enough berries, roots, or small game to survive. Yet even with hunger clawing at his belly, Daniel still felt a deep pull of curiosity whenever he heard the cries of creatures in the forest. Tonight, one cry was different. It was weak, thin, and full of pain. Daniel froze when he heard it, a sound like a kitten's mew but sharper, more desperate. It came from the edge of the trees. His instincts told him to stay away. On this planet, even the smallest thing could have venom or claws. But the cry came again, trembling, breaking, like a life fading away. Slowly, he picked up the lantern and walked toward the sound. The brush parted, and Daniel stopped cold. A small creature stumbled into the faint light. It was no bigger than a house cat, but its body was striped with glowing blue patterns. Its eyes were wide and golden, shining with fear. Its ribs stuck out, its movements weak. It was a cub, an alien cub. Daniel's heart clenched. The little thing looked so thin it might collapse at any moment. It swayed on unsteady legs, then fell onto its side with a faint whimper. For a moment, Daniel thought about turning back. He had only a handful of dried meat left in his pouch. If he gave it away, he might go hungry himself. Yet as he looked down at the cub, shivering, ribs pushing against its skin, he could not walk away. With slow, careful hands, Daniel reached into his pouch. He tore off a small strip of meat and placed it on the ground. The cub lifted its head, sniffed, then crawled forward. Its tiny teeth tore at the food with desperate speed. In seconds, it was gone. The cub looked up at him, eyes shining with hunger and hope. Daniel gave it another piece. And another. Soon, the last of his pouch was empty. The cub licked its jaws and made a soft purring sound. Then, to Daniel's surprise, it rubbed against his leg, like a cat showing affection. Daniel laughed softly. "You're welcome, little one," he whispered. But as he stood there, the forest grew quiet. Too quiet. The background noise of chirps and growls faded away. Even the wind seemed to stop. Then came the sound. A deep rumbling growl that made the ground itself seem to tremble. Daniel's heart leapt into his throat. From the trees, two golden eyes appeared, larger, brighter, burning like fire. A massive shape stepped forward, and the lantern's glow revealed it. It was the cub's mother. Her body was sleek and powerful, striped with the same glowing blue as her child, but her form was far more fearsome. Muscles rippled beneath her fur. Her fangs shone like ivory blades. She was taller than Daniel, a predator built for speed and strength. The cub gave a happy cry and bounded to her side. The mother's eyes locked on Daniel. He froze, every nerve screaming at him to run, but his legs would not move. The great beast leaned down, sniffed her cub, then lifted her head back toward the human. Daniel braced himself for the end, but instead of leaping, the tigress made a low sound, something between a growl and a purr. Her glowing eyes studied him, sharp and knowing. Slowly, she padded closer. Daniel's hand tightened on the lantern handle, though he knew it was useless. The tigress stopped just a few feet away. She sniffed the air, then gave a deep, rumbling huff. The cub mewed again and rubbed against her leg. And then, something Daniel did not expect happened. The tigress lowered her head slightly, almost like a bow. Daniel blinked, not sure if he was seeing things. She did not attack. Instead, she stood tall and proud, her golden eyes never leaving his. It was not the look of a beast toward prey. It was something else, something more dangerous, something intelligent, and in that moment, Daniel understood. Feeding the cub had not gone unnoticed. The mother had seen, and she was not angry. She was interested. The tigress stood in front of Daniel, her glowing stripes like fire under the night sky. The cub nestled against her leg, purring, safe now with its mother. Daniel's heart pounded. He had faced hunger, storms, and the loneliness of being stranded, but never this. A predator of this size should have killed him at once. Instead, she studied him. Her golden eyes moved over him as if she was weighing, measuring, deciding. Her breath came in slow, hot waves carrying the scent of the forest and raw power. Daniel held still, afraid that even the smallest movement might trigger an attack. Yet the tigress did not strike. She lowered her head again, close enough that he could feel the heat of her breath against his skin. The growl in her throat was low, deep, but not filled with rage. It was something else, a sound that felt thoughtful. The cub squeaked and pawed at her, and the mother made a soft rumbling sound in reply. She turned her gaze back to Daniel, and in those golden eyes he saw not just an animal's hunger, but something sharp, something alive. Intelligence, Daniel whispered under his breath. You understand, don't you? The tigress tilted her head slightly, and the gesture was so human-like it sent chills down his spine. Then, to his surprise, she moved closer. Daniel stepped back, his body trembling, but she followed, slow and deliberate, like a queen approaching a subject. Her fur glowed faintly under the lantern's light, her stripes pulsing as though alive. The cub trailed behind, curious, playful. The tigress stopped when she was just a breath away. She lowered herself onto her front legs, stretching out like a cat, but her gaze never left his. It was a strange pose, powerful, graceful, and almost inviting. Daniel didn't know what to think. His mind screamed danger, but another part of him felt something else. A pull. He remembered Earth's tigers, their beauty and grace admired by humans even while feared. But this creature was more than an animal. There was intent in her eyes. Awareness. She rose again, towering over him, and then slowly circled him. Every step was silent, smooth, as if she were performing a ritual. The cub chirped and played in her shadow, but Daniel's focus stayed locked on the mother. When she stopped behind him, he dared not turn. He felt her breath against his neck. His body shook with fear, but he stayed still. The tigress huffed, then brushed her flank against him as she passed by, her glowing fur leaving a faint shimmer in the air. The touch was soft but heavy, like the weight of a storm cloud. Daniel gasped. It was not an attack. It was contact marking him. The realization made his skin crawl. She was claiming him, not as prey, but as something else. The tigress returned to stand in front of him once more. Her cub pawed at his boots, purring. Daniel looked down at the small creature, then back up into the golden eyes of the mother. She lowered her head again, closer this time, her face inches from his. Her eyes locked on his, unblinking. He could not look away. The air between them felt heavy, charged, like the silence before thunder. For the first time since arriving on this world, Daniel felt truly seen. The tigress gave a final deep growl, not of anger but of warning or perhaps promise. Then she turned away. Her cub trotted beside her, but before disappearing into the trees, the mother looked back one last time. Her eyes glowed in the dark, holding his gaze until the forest swallowed them both. Daniel stood frozen long after they were gone. His chest heaved, his hands shook, but his mind was alive with questions. Why hadn't she killed him? Why had she acted with such strange grace? Why had she touched him as if to claim him? He looked down at his empty pouch. He had fed the cub, and in doing so, he had crossed a line he did not yet understand. The forest slowly came alive again, with chirps and rustles. The silence broke, but Daniel's world had changed. That night he could not sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her gaze. The way it had pinned him, the way it had lingered, not like a beast's, but like a woman's. The thought made him laugh nervously. It was impossible, absurd. And yet the memory of her eyes, bright and unyielding, stirred something inside him he did not want to name. He had fed a starving cub, and now its mother knew him, and she would return. The next day passed in silence. Daniel tried to go about his routine, but his thoughts always drifted back to the night before. He could not shake the image of the mother's glowing stripes, her golden eyes, her strange and knowing look. He searched for berries and roots near the river, but even as he worked, his ears strained for sounds from the forest. Every rustle made his heart race. Every shadow looked like her shape. By evening, the forest grew restless again. Birds took to the sky, chattering in alarm. Small animals darted into burrows. The air grew heavy, as if a storm was near. Daniel knew what it meant. She was coming. The memory of her growl made his stomach twist, but he did not run. Something inside him whispered to stay. The sun had just set when he heard it, the soft padding of large paws on the earth. The cub's cry followed, cheerful and bright. Daniel turned, lantern in hand, and saw them step out from the trees. The cub rushed ahead, bounding toward him with happy chirps. It rubbed against his leg like before, as if no time had passed. But the mother, she was different tonight. Her body gleamed with a faint blue glow, brighter than before, her stripes pulsing softly like flowing rivers of light. She moved with slow grace, but each step was firm, deliberate. She was not just visiting, she was making a point. Daniel's mouth went dry as she stopped a few feet away, eyes locked on him. The cub looked up at her, then at him, as if urging the two together. For a long moment, no one moved. Then the tigress stepped forward. Daniel's heart thudded as she closed the distance. He could see the scars on her shoulders, marks from old battles. He could see her fangs sharp and gleaming. Yet her eyes, they were calm, fixed on him with that same intelligent fire. She stopped so close he could feel her breath again. The cub sat at her paws, watching like a child waiting for approval. Daniel whispered, "Why are you here?" His voice trembled, but the words slipped out. The tigress tilted her head, the same human-like motion as before. Then she lowered herself, stretching along the ground, her glowing body rippling with power. It was not submission. It was a test. Daniel realized it in an instant. She was daring him to approach, to prove he was not just prey hiding in fear. His legs shook. Every part of him wanted to run, but something deeper held him still. He took a breath, then slowly crouched down. The cub purred at the sight, happy with his choice. Daniel stretched out a shaking hand, not toward the cub this time, but toward the mother. His fingers hovered inches from her fur, the glow lighting his skin. The tigress did not move. Her golden eyes never left his. Finally, his hand brushed her side. Her fur was soft yet thick, warm with life. Her muscles coiled like steel beneath. A shiver ran through him at the contact. The tigress rumbled, a sound deep in her chest. It was not a growl. It was something closer to approval. Daniel pulled his hand back, his breath coming fast. But the tigress leaned closer, pressing her head briefly against his shoulder. The weight almost toppled him. Then she pulled away, rising to her full height once more. Her eyes held his, steady, burning, unreadable. She had accepted his courage. The cub chirped, climbing onto his lap, playful and trusting. Daniel laughed nervously, stroking its glowing fur. For the first time in weeks, he felt warmth in his chest that was not just fear or hunger. The tigress turned her head to the trees, ears twitching. She growled low, and Daniel realized she had sensed something. He tensed, ready for danger. But after a moment, the forest quieted again. She looked back at him, her gaze softer now, almost curious. Then she stepped back. The cub mewed in protest, but the mother nudged it gently. Together they returned to the shadows of the trees. Before vanishing, she turned once more. Her eyes glowed like two suns, locked on him until the darkness swallowed her form. Daniel sat frozen, the cub's warmth still lingering on his clothes, his hand still tingling from her touch. It was no longer a question. The tigress was not just watching. She was testing him, studying him, and each time she drew him deeper into her strange, dangerous world. He whispered into the night, "What do you want from me?" But the only answer was the echo of her growl in the distance, a sound that was no longer a threat. It was a promise. The nights after her visit felt different. Daniel no longer heard the forest the same way. Every shadow seemed alive, every sound carried meaning. But he also noticed something else. Since the tigress had touched him, the smaller creatures of the forest no longer came close. Birds grew quiet when he walked by. Even the wild dogs that had once stalked his camp now kept their distance. It was as if her mark lingered on him, warning the forest that he was not alone. Daniel should have felt safer. Yet at night, when he sat outside with his small lantern, he often felt her eyes, watching, always watching. And she was not the only one. On the fourth night, the silence came again. The forest went still, too still. Daniel froze as the cub's soft chirp echoed from the edge of the trees. He turned, half expecting the glowing stripes of the tigress. But instead, he saw something else, a pair of pale green eyes, far apart, set much higher than hers. They blinked once, then vanished into the dark. Daniel's stomach dropped. The cub whined softly, and then like a flash of blue fire, the tigress emerged. She moved faster than he had ever seen, her body glowing bright, her growl rolling like thunder. The cub rushed to her side, trembling. Daniel stepped back, his pulse racing. Whatever those eyes belonged to, it was not friendly. The tigress stalked forward, every muscle tense, her stripes blazing with light as if to drive away the shadows. Something in the forest growled back. It was deep, guttural and wrong. Daniel saw a faint shape between the trees, tall, too tall, with arms long and thin. Its eyes glowed again, green and hungry. The tigress roared. The sound shook the air, echoing across the valley. The green eyes flickered once more, then vanished into the dark. Silence followed. The cub pressed against its mother's leg. She stood firm, her glowing body blocking Daniel from view. For the first time, Daniel understood. She was not just testing him, she was protecting him. Daniel's voice shook. You kept it away." The tigress turned her head, golden eyes locking on his. She made a low rumble, steady and firm, before nudging the cub forward. The little one padded to Daniel's side again, curling against him as if to prove he was safe. Daniel knelt, resting a trembling hand on the cub's back. He looked up at the mother. "Why?" he whispered. "Why protect me?" The tigress said nothing, only stared. But in that silence, Daniel felt the weight of her choice. She had claimed him, and she was showing the forest what that meant. The cub purred happily, unaware of the danger. Daniel's fear eased as he stroked its glowing fur. Yet his thoughts churned. That tall shape, those green eyes. He had never seen anything like it. And if the tigress guarded him from it, that meant she knew it well. The mother growled once more, low but commanding. She brushed against him again, heavier this time, her glow staining his clothes faintly blue. Then she stepped back, guiding the cub with a nudge. Daniel rose to his feet. His voice came stronger now. "I understand. You don't just want me to feed your cub. You want me to stay alive." The tigress gave a deep huff, almost like agreement, before leading her child back into the trees. As the forest swallowed their light, Daniel's lantern flickered. He stood alone again, but he did not feel the same fear as before. He was no longer just surviving. He was part of something larger, something the tigress had drawn him into. That night, lying awake on his thin bed, he thought of her eyes. Not the green ones of the stranger in the dark, but the golden ones of the tigress, eyes that had tested him, touched him, and now guarded him. She was not just a predator. She was a force. And for reasons he did not yet understand, she had chosen him. But deep down, Daniel knew the truth. If there was one tigress watching him, there would be more, and if there was one green-eyed shadow, others would follow. The forest was not done with him yet. The next morning, Daniel rose early. Sleep had been thin and broken, his mind still caught between fear of the green-eyed shadow and awe of the tigress mother. For the first time since his crash, he wanted daylight to come faster. The sun rose pale over the alien forest. Mist hung low, clinging to the roots and vines. Daniel stepped outside his small cabin, squinting in the soft light. He carried his knife, though he knew it was useless against creatures of this world. It was more comfort than weapon. For weeks he had only seen the tigress and her cub under the cover of night. He thought maybe the day would pass without them. Yet his chest tightened with hope and unease every time he looked toward the tree line. By midday, as he gathered roots near the stream, the cub appeared. It bounded from the bushes, its glowing blue stripes shining even under the sun. Daniel froze, then laughed nervously as the little one chirped and darted between his legs. "You again," Daniel muttered, crouching down. The cub pawed at his hand until he offered a small root. It sniffed, nibbled, then made a face and spat it out. Daniel chuckled. "Not good enough, huh?" The cub mewed in reply, and then the forest shifted. The air grew heavy, the same way it always did before her arrival. Birds scattered from the trees, and Daniel felt the hairs on his neck rise. Slowly he turned. She stepped into the clearing. For the first time, Daniel saw the tigress in full daylight. Her body glowed faintly, the blue stripes shimmering like rivers of light running across her fur. Her muscles rippled with strength under every movement, yet there was no clumsiness, only grace, every step silent and certain. She was larger than he had realized in the dark. Standing tall, her head rose higher than his chest. Her tail swayed with slow rhythm, her eyes sharp and golden as they locked on him. Daniel swallowed hard. In the light, she looked even more dangerous, but also more beautiful. The cub ran to her, chirping happily. The mother lowered her head, nuzzled the child, then lifted her gaze back to Daniel. He expected a growl, maybe a warning. Instead, she moved closer. Each step was measured, her eyes never leaving his face. Daniel held his ground. His pulse raced, but he forced his feet to stay planted. He remembered how she had tested him before. If he showed weakness now, she might not forgive it. The tigress stopped a few feet away. The cub sat between them, tail flicking like it was enjoying the game. Daniel whispered, "So we meet in the daylight." The tigress tilted her head at the sound of his voice. Then slowly she lowered herself to the ground, stretching long across the grass. She lay there, eyes fixed on him as if inviting him again. Daniel hesitated. The cub chirped and pawed at him, urging him forward. His hand shook as he reached out. The tigress did not move, only watched as he placed his hand gently against her side. The warmth of her fur under the sun made him shiver. She gave a deep rumble in her chest, not angry but steady. Daniel whispered, "You're not just an animal, are you?" The tigress lifted her head, eyes sharp, burning like molten gold. The way she looked at him was not wild or mindless. It was searching, knowing, and in that gaze Daniel felt something strange. Not just the fear of prey before a predator, not just awe at her power, something deeper. She rose slowly, brushing her flank against him as she passed, leaving his arm tingling where her fur had touched. She circled him again, deliberate like before, but in the daylight it felt clearer, like a ritual, a claim. When she returned to stand in front of him, Daniel's breath caught. She leaned her head forward until her nose was almost touching his chest. Her eyes rose to his face, unblinking, piercing. For a moment, Daniel felt the world vanish. There was only her heat, her scent, her eyes locking him in place. Then she pulled back with a slow, graceful motion. She nudged the cub toward him again, as though telling him to keep feeding, to keep caring. Daniel crouched and stroked the cub, though his mind was still locked on the mother. He had the sense that she understood far more than he imagined. When the cub finished playing, the tigress gave a low growl and turned. She padded back toward the trees, but before entering the shadows, she looked over her shoulder. Her eyes met his one last time, and in them was no threat. It was invitation. Daniel's knees felt weak. He sat on the ground as the forest swallowed her form. For the first time, he dared to whisper the thought that had haunted him since that first night. "She isn't just a beast," he said to himself. "She's something more." The cub had brought him its mother, and its mother had brought him into a mystery he could no longer escape. The days passed slowly, each one shaped by Daniel's silent waiting. He still searched for food, still struggled to survive, but everything he did now felt smaller compared to the moments he shared with her. The tigress always came at dusk or dawn. The cub ran to him first, playful and trusting, while the mother stood back, golden eyes sharp, glowing stripes burning like rivers in the mist. Each meeting was a test. Each touch, each circle drew him deeper into her world, but on the sixth night she came differently. Daniel sat near the stream, sharpening his knife, when the forest went still. He knew the silence well now. He turned, expecting her glow. Instead, he saw two glows, hers and another. The tigress stepped into the clearing, her cub bounding beside her. But behind her was a shape Daniel had never seen before, another of her kind. This one was larger, scarred, its stripes duller, its eyes less bright than hers. It growled low, teeth bared, gaze fixed on Daniel. Daniel's blood ran cold. His hand gripped the knife, though he knew it meant nothing. He was trapped between two giants, but then the mother moved. She stepped between Daniel and the stranger. Her body lowered, her stripes burning brighter, her growl rolling like thunder. Daniel froze, his heart racing. She was protecting him. Again. The other tigress snarled and circled. The cub hid behind its mother's legs. The mother stood firm, tail lashing, every muscle alive. The air shook with their roars as they clashed. They leapt, teeth snapping, claws raking. Sparks of glowing blue fur lit the clearing. Daniel stumbled back, nearly falling into the stream, his chest heaving. The fight was fierce but short. The stranger struck hard, but the mother struck harder. With a final roar, she forced the rival to the ground, her jaws at its throat. For a long moment, Daniel thought she would kill it, but she didn't. Instead, she released it with a low growl. The stranger rose, limping, and slunk back into the trees. The forest swallowed it whole. The mother stood tall, her sides heaving, blood streaking her glowing stripes. She turned to Daniel, golden eyes fierce, unbroken. Daniel whispered, "You fought for me." The cub chirped, rubbing against his legs as if to comfort him. Daniel's body trembled, his mind racing. The tigress padded forward. She stopped before him, her fur stained but her gaze steady. She lowered her head and pressed her forehead against his chest. Daniel froze, breath caught in his throat. The weight of her touch was heavy, but it carried no threat. It was a mark, a claim, a bond. Daniel's voice was barely a whisper. "You're showing me." The tigress lifted her head. Her golden eyes burned into his. Then she did something strange. She stepped back and sat. Her glowing tail curled neatly around her paws. She lifted one massive paw and struck it against the earth once, twice, 3 times. The sound echoed in the clearing. Daniel blinked. It was too deliberate to be random. Then she growled, low and rhythmic, her eyes never leaving his. The cub mimicked her, pawing at the ground with smaller beats. Daniel felt his skin prickle. It was not just noise. It was pattern, ritual. She was showing him something, showing him that her people, her kind, were not wild beasts. They had ways, rules, meaning, and he had been brought into it. The tigress rose again, circling him slowly. Daniel stood still, his chest tight, his mind spinning. When she stopped before him, she gave a final deep rumble, almost like a chant, before brushing against him once more. Her blood streaked his clothes. Her glow lit his skin. Daniel whispered, "You're more than I ever thought." The tigress gave a slow blink, like understanding before turning. She nudged her cub, guiding it back toward the forest. But before leaving, she looked over her shoulder once more. Her eyes locked with his, and this time, Daniel did not see only hunger or power. He saw history, memory, purpose. As if she was not just an individual, but the voice of something greater. The forest swallowed her again, leaving Daniel trembling by the stream. He sank to his knees, knife forgotten, his breath ragged. He had thought he was alone on this world. Now he knew the truth. He was part of something far older, far more dangerous and far more intelligent than he had imagined, and it had chosen him. The nights grew darker after the battle. Daniel knew the forest held secrets he could not yet see. He also knew he was no longer just a man lost on an alien world. He had been marked, tested, and chosen. But by what? By her. The tigress returned more often now. Sometimes she brought food, strange glowing birds, fresh meat from beasts Daniel had never dared to hunt. She would drop the kill at his feet, watching as he cooked, her eyes never leaving him. The cub would play nearby while she sat like a queen on her throne, silent and proud. Other times she circled his camp, her growls low, warning away things unseen. He began to realize her glow was not just beauty. It was power. It kept the forest in balance, and then one night the balance broke. Daniel woke to the cub's frightened cries. The air was heavy, thick with a smell like rot. Outside, the lantern flickered weakly. The green eyes were back, they glowed in the dark, closer now, dozens of them. Shapes moved in the shadows, tall, thin, wrong. Daniel stumbled outside, knife in hand, though fear gripped his bones. "No, not now," he whispered. The cub whimpered, pressing against his leg. Then the forest roared. She came like lightning, her stripes blazing bright enough to turn night into day. The tigress leapt into the clearing, her roar tearing through the air. The green-eyed things hissed, but they did not retreat. They had come for him. Daniel froze as the tigress stood between him and the swarm. She was outnumbered, yet her body burned with light, her growls shaking the ground. The cub cried out, but she nudged it behind Daniel, her golden eyes sharp, commanding, "Protect him." The battle erupted. The tigress moved like fire, claws flashing, jaws crushing. She tore through the first of the green-eyed creatures, her stripes burning so bright Daniel had to shield his eyes. But for everyone she struck down, more came. They circled, hissing, their long arms reaching. Daniel's heart pounded. He could not just watch. He grabbed a burning stick from the fire and swung it wildly, driving back the closest of the shadows. They shrieked at the flame, retreating. The tigress glanced at him, her eyes fierce, approving. Together they fought, the human with his fire, the tigress with her fury. The cub growled too, small but brave, standing at Daniel's side. One of the green-eyed beasts lunged. Daniel thrust the fire into its face and it screamed before vanishing into the dark. Another clawed at him, but the tigress crushed it with a single swipe, her glow burning hotter, brighter. The air shook with roars and screeches. The forest itself seemed to tremble, And then, silence. The last of the green eyes faded into the trees. The clearing was littered with shadows that melted into the ground like smoke. Daniel dropped to his knees, chest heaving. His stick burned low, ash falling. The cub pressed against him, purring shakily. The tigress stood above him, her fur glowing faint, her body streaked with blood. She was wounded, but still unbroken. She turned her golden eyes on him. In that moment, Daniel understood. She had not only protected him, she had fought beside him. She had shared her strength, trusted him to stand with her. This was not accident. It was bond. She stepped closer, lowering her head until her face was inches from his. Her eyes burned into his, and he felt the weight of her will. It was not hunger. It was not threat. It was choice, Daniel whispered, breathless. You want me to stand with you? To be part of this. To be part of... You? The tigress rumbled deep in her chest, not denying it. She brushed her head against him again, her glow staining his skin, her scent marking him as her own. Daniel closed his eyes. For the first time since the crash, he did not feel alone. When he opened them, the cub was curled at his side, safe, while the mother stood tall, her golden eyes fixed on the forest. She was wounded, but still proud. Still alive. Daniel rose slowly. He placed a hand on her glowing fur. Then I choose too, he whispered. Whatever this is, I'm with you. The tigress gave a final, deep growl, low, strong, and steady. Not a warning, a promise. The forest slowly came alive again, but Daniel knew everything had changed. He was no longer just a survivor on a strange planet. He was bonded to a tigress queen, chosen by her kind, and bound to fight the shadows that haunted the world. The cub purred at his feet. The mother's eyes glowed like fire in the night, and Daniel, for the first time in his life, felt stronger than human, because he was no longer standing alone.